Case 2.1 The Prisoner's Dilemma by Emma Randolph. The summary of The Prisoner's Dilemma. According to James Rachels, one day you're arrested and charged with treason. The police say you have been plotting against the government with a man named Smith, who has been arrested, and you both are being held in separate cells. You protest your innocence. You don't even know Smith. However, that does not work. They offer you the following deal. If Smith does not confess, but you confess, and testify against him, they will release you. You will go free, whereas Smith, who did not cooperate, will be put away for 10 years. If Smith confesses and you do not, the situation will be reversed. He will go free while you get 10 years. If you both confess, however, you will both be sentenced for 5 years. If neither confess, there won't be enough evidence to convict either of you. They can hold you for a year, but then they will have to let you both go. Why we should confess. Is it right or wrong? As most people would do, they would act in their own individual self-interest. Therefore, confessing may get them out of jail sooner because, as the deal stated, if you confess and Smith does not, they will release you and Smith will be put away for 10 years. But remember, the deal is offered to both of you. Therefore, acting in your own self-interest may not be the best idea. According to Rachels on page 103, you should not act in your own self-interest because, by rationally pursuing your own interest, you both end up worse off than if you had acted differently. The moral issues at stake. The moral issues at stake is to not act in your own self-interest. By acting in your own self-interest, you both will be sentenced 5 years in prison because you both would have confessed. However, if you have done the opposite, each of you would have gotten out in only 1 year. According to Rachels, that's the catch. By rationally pursuing your own interest, you both end up worse off than if you had acted differently. It is a paradoxical situation. You and Smith will both be better off if you simultaneously do what is not on your own individual self-interest. The main case to the prisoner's dilemma. Self-interest is the least rational way to act. This is the most moral idea in the prisoner's dilemma's case. Kantian ethics. Kantian ethics bases its morality on the categorical imperative. The categorical imperatives are commands you must follow regardless of your desires. The two main formulas of the categorical imperative are the universalizability principle and the formula of humanity. Crash Course states, acts so that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in that of another, always as an end and never as a mere means. In other words, never use people. Kantian ethics is against lying. Therefore, if you were to confess, you would be violating the categorical imperative because you would be lying. You were set up and got charged with treason. You never actually plotted against the government. So, if you lie to someone, you are using them as a mere means because you are deceiving them. If you confess, you are not being truthful because the story is that you didn't do it. Lying would violate the categorical imperative because Kant is against lying and treating others as a means. In my opinion, based on Kantian ethics, you should act in your own individual self-interest if it doesn't hurt others. Therefore, Kant would believe that acting in your own self-interest would be the least rational decision because for Kant, he is against lying and he shouldn't go against the categorical imperative. If we are supposed to be truthful, then Kant says we should continue to deny that we did it, and I would be getting out of jail within 1 year instead of 5. Utilitarianism. The utilitarianism theory wants to maximize utility and avoid pain and promote pleasure and happiness. According to Crash Course, actions would be measured in terms of happiness or pleasure that they produce. This theory isn't only about making us happy, but what would help benefit and make others happy as well. The utilitarianism theory differs from ethical egoism because based on utilitarianism, you should do what would benefit you as well as others. Whereas, in ethical egoism, you are doing what is best for yourself only. Therefore, based on the utilitarianism theory, you should do what benefits you as well as others. Utilitarianism doesn't base its theory on the fact that lying isn't acceptable, like the Kantian ethics theory. According to utilitarianism, you don't always know what others will do. Hypothetically, if we both do not confess, there won't be enough evidence to convict either of you. They can hold you for a year, but then they will have to let you both go. However, if we do not know what Smith is going to say, perhaps, say Smith confesses, but you do not. Smith will go free while you get 10 years in prison. However, if the role is reversed, you confess, but Smith does not, you will go free and Smith will get 10 years. Overall, if you both do not confess, you will both be going free within 1 year. Getting out in 1 year instead of 5 or 10 years will lead to pleasure and happiness for you and your family, as well as Smith and his family. Ethical egoism. Ethical egoism states that you ought to act in your own self-interest, no matter the situation. This theory is like utilitarianism, because choosing an action should result in the most good. But with ethical egoism, you are doing what is best for your own self, whereas utilitarianism is considering your own self as well as others. Ethical egoism would want you to act in your own self-interest, but as we have learned from the case study, this is not the most rational choice. The case shows us the faults of why acting in our own self-interest is the least rational decision. If you decide to act in your own self-interest and confess, but Smith does not, then you are going to go free. But Smith will be put away for 10 years. This is not a good theory, because in this case, if you act in your own individual self-interest, then you are more than likely staying in prison longer than you should be. In some cases, acting in your own individual self-interest isn't always the most logical decision. The conclusion. In conclusion, while considering the case, the prisoner's dilemma, I believe that acting in your own individual self-interest is the least rational decision for this case. One day, you are arrested and charged for treason, for plotting against the government with a guy named Smith. You protest your innocence. You don't even know Smith. However, that does not work. They offer you a deal that may let you get out of prison or may make you stay in prison for a maximum of 10 years. The catch is, Smith got the same deal. Therefore, Rachel states, by rationally pursuing your own interest, you both end up worse off than if you had acted differently. You and Smith will both be better off if you simultaneously do what is not in your own individual self-interest. Page 102. I believe that acting in your own self-interest is the least rational decision for this case. I would follow Kantian ethics because I don't agree with lying, and I like to follow what would benefit me and not others as well. I don't agree with utilitarianism because I like to do what benefits me and only me, not others all the time. Finally, if I would follow Kantian ethics for this case and agree that acting in my own self-interest, this would be the least rational decision. Works cited.